They've always called us giants. We spend our lives in the ocean. Our universe is the deep blue. They say we've changed the course of history, that our flesh has fed legions and armies. But my colleagues and I keep on swimming, as we always have, in search of our destinies, beyond time. Our problems begin as we approach land, that mysterious boundary we have yet to understand. This is our story.
ULTIMATUNA.
It was never easy for us to get through here. This is the part of our ocean that becomes very tight and forces us to negotiate a narrow pass between two stretches of land that are very close to each other. Also, this is the place where they harass us, our worst enemy. The orcas remain silent, still, so that we can't even hear them. Under Gibraltar's darkness, they let us see their white spots whenever it behooves them. They make us stray from our path. They lead us towards the shore. We've been fleeing them for thousands of years. Yet they still know how to deceive us. They're intelligent, thinking mammals, and we're just fish. If one strays from the group, it is lost. But that white abdomen strikes fear in our hearts, and one of us loses control. We have reached the end. The orcas force us to swim close to land, far from the safety of the depths of the strait. Here, on the surf, there's another mammal that realized this a long time ago. The others. Those who fill the sea with doorways, who are capable of ingenuities we have yet to understand, and who are absolutely lethal to us. Huge eyes that follow us from the dawn of time, that push us to the verge of life. They've always called us giants, great reds, or bluefin tuna. The oldest of us were once as big as whales, but it's been a long time since I saw one of those. To the others, we're much too valuable. This has been happening to us for over 30,000 years. Here, Neanderthal clans devoured our juicy and fatty meat with delight, as shown by prehistoric instruments found in caves throughout this coastline.
Every year, giant tuna cross the Strait of Gibraltar, swimming between Europe and Africa. They come from the Atlantic Ocean, where they've been feeding for months, and they enter the Mediterranean to reproduce. Hordes by the thousands that will not feed at all for another 2 months. This is why they cannot be fished conventionally. In all of the oceans, there isn't a comparable amount of biomass that moves as one. This red tide constitutes the most massive migration on the planet. The Neanderthals knew that there was only one way to get hold of that precious meat: to be on the lookout for black fins. Orcas, both then as well as now, enter the Mediterranean following the schools of bluefin tuna to prey on them. The panic these cetaceans cause among the great reds is such that they often end up beached on the sand. And the clan knew this. This ancient interaction takes place in the Spanish towns of Barbate and Zahara. Here, orcas are known by their ancient name, Espartes. Andres is a fisherman who will never forget his encounter with them.
Here in Andalusia, we have a saying that goes, "Every time I see you, my flesh tears off my bones like the tunas when they spot the orcas." In other words, you go crazy. It's been around here, always around this time of year, preyed upon by the orcas. That tuna have been found along this shore, and each tuna belongs to whoever finds it. So if 4 or 5 guys fish one, then those 4 or 5 share the profits from the sale of that tuna. They cornered a tuna here, behind the curve of the beach and the breakwater, and I saw the fin of the orca that had cornered it. When I saw that, I went into such a panic. That tuna must have been so close to the shore that it was dragging sand. But it looked out there and saw that orca, and I said, "My God, the orca's out there." My biggest fear, since the tuna was already cornered, was that she would get to the tuna and tumble our boat. We saw the orca bite the tuna in half. The water was full of suds of blood and water. Half of that recently killed tuna sank to the bottom, and the orca ate the other half.
Until not too long ago, nobody suspected that this relationship between tuna, man, and orcas could have been so vital to the history of humanity. In Zahara de los Atunes Beach, researcher Mario Morcillo has discovered something fascinating, which he shows in an experiment he conducts with his students. The sound is surprisingly amplified from the shore to the rocky cover and to a cave that can be found on top.
Attention! Ready? Both hands up. Both hands up. Both
The
hands.
acoustic effect is similar to that of some cathedrals.
Incredible, isn't
The
it?
secret is in the cave.
What's interesting about this is that this connects with the cave, and the cave handles all of the tuna's movement. It's amazing that the cave was made this way on purpose. If this is a herd of orcas, and they get to here, if they make a sound in this cave shaped like a nautilus, that sound will reach all the way here. Could it be that they called the animals so that they would come to this point? What they're doing now is pushing the tuna toward the coast. How did ancient man capture the tuna? One of the hypotheses is that they were helped by the orcas, which pushed the tuna out of the water.
The cave of the orcas could also have been a sun clock capable of predicting the arrival of the tuna, with Neolithic symbols that refer to Ares, the sea ram, as well as the ancient name given to the orcas.
At sunset, the light draws the shape of the cave entrance and the carvings reflect silhouettes. An arrow and a cross, the symbol of Sagittarius. And from that day, the sun moves a bit every day and signals each. Look, point by point, until it's spring again and it marks this one, the symbol of Aries. What's interesting is that orcas also go by the name Aries.
The same symbol found on the backs of the Aspartes that strikes fear among the tuna.
And this corresponds with the March equinox, which is when spring begins, and also when the tuna begin to enter here in front. So these paintings are Neolithic, and they must be over 5,000 years old. They face a point through which the current brings in the tuna, where the orcas are waiting, and also the time of year they enter the dwelling. It could even be an orca caller warning that there are tuna here. If you hollered every time you saw tuna on the beach, they would automatically associate that sound with the beach. They come, corner them, take what's theirs, and throw as many as they can out of the water. There was a collaboration between the ancients and the orcas. Think about it, the cave that called the orcas.
The giant tuna has been the most important animal to the development of Mediterranean civilizations. The Phoenicians discovered their relationship with orcas, and later, the Greeks and the Romans learned from them. In a place that's very close to the cave, alongside a Phoenician settlement, the Roman Empire built this city for just one reason: the red tuna. Here in Baelo Claudia, it established one of its factories that fished, processed, and packaged this resource. The fatty flesh of the children of the strait was cut into pieces and left to macerate in salt in these vats for 20 days. Understanding the information provided by orcas, knowing the best place to catch tuna, the time of year they appear in, and the best way to preserve them became the secret that could lift or tumble empires. Tuna conserved in salt or olive oil inside clay amphorae were the fuel that fed the oarsmen who made Phoenician, Greek, and Roman ships move, as well as their armies, constituting the great logistical secret of antiquity. The people who understood the importance of those black fins would know where to capture the tons of nutritional meat provided by the Great Red, and could control the known world, the Mare Nostrum. It's a question of simple economics. Thousands of years ago, protein deficiency was a grave problem. Any civilization that wanted to feed their troops was necessarily forced to find enormous amounts of meat in little time, as well as a way to package it. The only way was to intercept the giants in their annual migration. And because tuna don't feed when they migrate, knowing the secret of the orcas and setting net traps in the appropriate places was the only way to catch them. The tradition of waiting for the giant tuna was not lost in the coasts of southern Spain. In May, hundreds of men trust that this year the red tide will return. They are the heirs of the secret of the Phoenicians, those who sailed in boats with eyes. They've been working all winter to set a trap for the steel giants. Many of them don't even know that their success will depend on whether or not the orcas carry out their task. Everything is ready. The income they'll earn to feed their families depends on what will happen in the next few hours. Nothing can go wrong if the tuna do return. Al-Madarab is Arabic for killing place. and it's the name given to the most ancestral and ingenious fishing trap still used today. The almadraba, a labyrinth for the great red. The first nets were made out of esparto grass, which is the same name given locally to orcas, esparte. There are no coincidences. Nets known as seines, many kilometers in length, descend vertically from the buoys and are fixed to the seabed with anchors to stop them from moving with the tides. The result is a massive trap with different compartments through which tuna enter in search of an exit that does not exist. At the end of this search, they reach the chamber of death.
In Andalusia, tuna are like pigs. Everybody wants them.
The almadraba is a fixed technique. It does not follow, it waits for the tuna. It counts on its behavior to trick it and make it trap itself. But if the orcas didn't chase them from the center of the strait towards land, this technique would not work. It's a face-to-face duel, a challenge in which either one could conceivably win. When tuna spawn in the Mediterranean, they live on their fat reserves. They seldom feed, which is why it's very difficult to catch them with bait. Only the millennial ingenuity of man and orca know what moves this giant. They are all adults, capable of reproducing. The almadraba rarely catches younger individuals. The divers discover them. There they are. Today we caught them. Rigid as torpedoes, the tuna can't make their bodies turn, nor stop swimming. They swim in together, and they'll die together. They're reaching the point of no return. They're many, and they're huge.
Some 200 more or less. 200 tuna, more or less. Yes, yes, today they're large. Other times they're smaller, but today they're big.
The sea will become too small for them until someone carries them out of the deep blue for the last time. Let the fiesta begin. They never agree on the exact figure. Miguel de Cervantes referred to the tunantes, the workers of the almadraba, the most renowned rogues of the time. The amount of tuna will decrease progressively by word of mouth.
177!
There's something legendary about the return of the heroes, the return of Ulysses after mocking the gods at sea.
According to what we've fished so far this year, we're going to have a good season. We're talking about a season of about 3,000 to 4,000 tuna. But we don't usually get 3,000 or 4,000 tuna in a year. We see a lot of small, short fish. I think that if they were all mature fish, that's when we should start to worry, because it means the species would be dying out, you know? It's the small fish that'll ensure our future.
But there is someone else here. Scientists observe the animals to carry out their research. Dr. José Luis Cort of the Spanish Institute of Oceanography is one of the main experts on bluefin tuna.
Approximately 150 specimens of a much larger catch, because what's been sent to the contiguous pools is more than what was captured. These are mixed types, large and small, which is something that this far into the season is a bit abnormal.
The researcher and the fishermen agree. The fact that there are small individuals is good news for the species, because it means that new generations are also a part of the reproductive population, which means that the tuna population in general is being renewed. The bluefin tuna has suffered from a century's worth of overfishing, which has considerably reduced its population. That is the scientists' main concern, as they must learn the secret of these giants in order to advise on how many can be fished without endangering the species. Nothing has changed since the times of the Phoenicians and the Romans. The red, juicy meat of the bluefin tuna that enters the Mediterranean to spawn can soar to unspeakable amounts in the Japanese market, where because of its rich flavor, it is used to prepare the best sushi and sashimi in the world. In 2010, a bluefin tuna was sold in Japan for $176,000. This always happens in the first auction of the year, though the average price is 20 times less. The truth is that, were it not for the Japanese, the ancient almadrabas would probably no longer exist. In order for tuna to be consumed raw in Japan, the least amount of time possible must go by from the moment it's caught to the moment it's served. Both in the almadraba and in tuna farms, time is a key factor. Part of them will be sold fresh, and part of them will be frozen at -60 degrees Celsius. The whole process occurs in minutes, under the careful watch of Japanese experts. For these giants, their journey will end in the air.
मुझे छोड़ के मुझे छोड़ के मुझे छोड़ के मुझे छोड़ के परदेसी परदेसी जाना
The Tsukiji market is the most important fish market in the world. The bluefin tuna from Spain arrive here and are treated with great care so they can be immediately evaluated by buyers, who examine and appraise them as if they were dealing with diamonds. It's their red gold, a part of their culture. It also cannot be a mere coincidence that the Japanese name for the most preferred cut of the tuna is toro. If the animal died under stress, its meat is worth much less. It must be presented without dents or bruises. Only then can it sell for the highest prices. Millions of very affluent Asians are willing to pay a steep price for the perfect meat of Mediterranean tuna, which have been their favorite for a very long time. The master cutters know the ancestral secrets that impart their meat that incomparable flavor. Food for emperors, once Roman and now Japanese. Bluefin tuna was once the privilege of the rich, but today it's become a dish that is eaten daily and is within reach of all social classes. A demand that has been created for it that can be fulfilled thanks to the tuna that are raised in farms.
We haven't even been in the Mediterranean yet, and many of us are already on the other side of the world. But we count on that. It was always thus. It's part of the essence of being a giant red. The body and blood of a missing brother leave only more space in the hoard. There is no such thing as pity in the mind of a fish. Like the orcas, the others love to eat us raw. At least they appreciate us. They need us so that they can be happy. That's something, isn't it? They were always waiting for us in Spain. They've always done so. Our arrival on these coasts gives them reason to celebrate. They like our meat very much. They enjoy it. It makes them joyful. It helps them improve their lives.
In Barbate, Cadiz, the arrival of the tuna is celebrated with a great fair. Here, people gather in traditional dress, and they consume the meat of the bluefin in a wide variety of recipes. An ancestral legacy, probably also performed by the Stone Age dwellers of these same lands. The proteins that enter by the tons elicit important social gatherings.
But we don't care. All we want to do is continue on our voyage towards the center of the Mediterranean. The water is warmer. We can feel that there's a higher density of salt than in the ocean, because from inside we hear the call of the larvae that we once were. The taste is already familiar to us, and the sun reminds us of bygone times. The others say that we are a biological wonder, that our body temperature can reach 20 degrees above that of the water that surrounds us, and that we are warm-blooded fish, that we reach astounding speeds thanks to our hydrodynamic design and the manner in which we swim, that our caudal fins work like a propeller, that our steel bodies are akin to a submarine's torpedo. They admire that we are able to reach velocities of 80 kilometers per hour, and that our social behavior is more similar to a cetacean than to a fish. We're travelers that have racked up thousands of miles, and we eat so much during our 40-year lifetimes that we can weigh up to 1,000 kilograms. The others say that there is no other animal with similar traits. We're almost there. The older ones have changed their color. They have another look. There's something in the water. The moon is approaching and is about to make a splash. This is the Sea of Giants, the Islands of the Whales, the Balearic Islands. We know the great sperm whale well. He's an old friend, also from the Atlantic Ocean. But in the blue, one can be very lonely. We swim together, fin to fin. We're almost a macroorganism. We have each other. A tuna always has a friend's eye covering his back. But we see them meander all alone, as if desolate. The turtle is as ancient as the heavens. It invariably seems to be in need of caresses. It always seemed unnerving to me that an animal could live with the sole company of its own extinction. And he, the strongest, knows no fear. Even the orcas think twice before attacking them. They only dare prey on their youngest offspring. We're all partners in the abyss. Anecdotes in the blue. Survivors of the old seas once inhabited by the gods. The winners dwell on the other side of the mirror. Maybe the dolphins know the answers. They also travel in groups. And they like to get near the others, to swim under the wide-eyed ships. Although they're cousins of the orcas, they're very different. We often hunt together. They help us catch large schools of sardines and anchovies. Plus, they know how to talk. This is our place, the place we were born in. The time has come. Everyone seems to understand what the moon is telling us. The secret waters in which our bodies were transformed for the first time many years ago. Here, everything is familiar to us. That mineral smell, the metallic light, the itchy feel from the plankton we were once a part of. We approach the surface, swimming very closely, rubbing our skins against each other. Nothing can stop us now. It's not love. It's the future.
The great reds reproduce in a handful of unknown areas. At 2 in the morning, under the cold light of the moon, they come together in massive numbers and begin to swim in circles. The dance of the giants. Their organs effervesce, their eyes move frantically, and their bodies change color. This is a sight that had never before been filmed. All of a sudden, a female leaves the group. Another 2 follow her, as well as various males. While they eject thousands of eggs into the dark sea, the males try to drape them with liters of sperm that paint the Mediterranean white. For almost an hour, every night during this season, the ballet of the tuna takes place. It is the reason for their long trip from the great Atlantic. The fertilized eggs are now in the hands of destiny. This is the moment in which tuna fishermen arrive in search of the precious red tuna in the waters of the Balearic Islands. They come in seiners, fishing boats with vast nets that will try to capture entire schools of these giants. The art of the seine requires a specialized crew in which each fisherman knows exactly what he has to do. The captain, Pere Vicent Balfegó, stays on the bridge day and night in a constant state of tension. They have very little time to reach their fishing quota, and the bluefin are not easy to find. A fleet of associated seiners, some French, some Spanish, have been patrolling the seas with their radars for 8 days, and they still haven't found anything. The crew is nervous and looks into the sea in search of clues. In ancient times, it was the seabirds that signaled the presence of hordes of tuna. But today, ship captains rely on their experience and intuition to be successful year after year. At the appropriate moment, the captain gives the order and they release the seine. In just a few minutes, they should be able to surround the school and leave them no way out. Until the seine is closed, the tuna still have a chance to escape. They're in. The seine only captures adults. Manel Balfegó knows why.
The seine net is used to capture the tuna when they're bunched up. The tuna bunch up for 2 reasons: to feed and to reproduce. Currently, we can only focus our work on the tuna that reproduce. We're in the midst of a recovery plan since the year 2007 because quotas have decreased sharply. We'll be fishing a total of 23 days throughout the year. Our dream, my dream, is that we fish responsibly, sustainably, and that our children can continue to enjoy fishing, which is extremely exciting and which we enjoy with great intensity.
Ecologists have sounded the alarm on the situation of the bluefin tuna population in the Mediterranean. International organizations and affected governments exercise fierce controls on fishermen in order to eradicate illegal fishing practices.
Could you please call the Fishing Control Center to make sure the CPS is working properly?
Responsible fishermen respectfully comply with constant inspections, but they complain that authorities don't equally control other areas of the sea that belong to less friendly nations. The tuna are the same, and the sea is vast. Bans and quotas are useless if they are only respected in the territorial waters of certain countries. And politicians don't know what to do.
Bad news. The fishing authority has forbidden European vessels from fishing for red tuna. We've completed our quota, but there are boats that haven't.
But work must go on. This is when some unusual men get ready to act. They seem to have risen out of the water, like neoprene tritons. Their job is to make the giants go from the Seine to the transport pool that is tugged by another recently arrived boat. They'll be kept alive in this pool, sometimes for years, until the time comes to sacrifice them. Like an elite tuna task force, within seconds and without previous discussion, they coordinate a fast and secure transfer of the fish with military precision. They're the Orca men, and they're descending into a world that's not their own to tell these giants what to do. Undoubtedly, they are real tuna cowboys. They communicate as cetaceans do, by whistling. This way, they make the giants enter a hole they open in the nets.
Last year, we proved that every night, from the start of the spawning period to the end, between 2 and 4 in the morning, every morning without exception, spontaneous spawning takes place on a massive scale inside the cages.
This discovery astounded the scientific community. A biological event of gargantuan proportions that had never before been witnessed. At first, they didn't believe them, but because their spotlights were focused on the cages, they saw that they were still inside them. The fishermen of La Metlla de Mar immediately knew that this was important, which is why they contacted the biologists at the Spanish Institute of Oceanography. The tuna continue to reproduce inside the transport cages, and their fertilized eggs escape into the open sea freely through the nets. This means that they are the only fish in the world that can spawn after being caught. If the cages were left here for a few weeks, the tuna in captivity would be able to reproduce. What's more, this could be a vital step in closing their life cycle in captivity and preserving wild populations from extinction.
And some ecologists said that these eggs were not proven to be viable. not proven viable.
But again, it is science that must decide.
We're gathering eggs directly from where they were laid in a transport cage. The eggs are going to be laid here, so bring the containers. This is a natural spawn from which we're going to take some eggs. For the few weeks that they survive, we're going to try to study the larva growth and mortality of this species.
Dr. Ana Gordoa was impressed.
Amazing! Look, look, look! We take some eggs to the facilities at the Government Center for Scientific Research, and other eggs go to the Spanish Oceanography Institute, as well as to other institutions. The ultimate goal of all this is to analyze the real viability in starting an aquaculture of red tuna in the Mediterranean, so that the impact fishing has on annual reproduction is minimized. That is, if we maintain that group of tuna until they finish reproducing in the natural areas of reproduction, we allow their eggs and larvae to be as viable as they would be had they not been fished.
72 hours later, a worldwide success. Dr. Gordoa's eggs have hatched in the labs of the Oceanography Institute, a first in the history of science. There may yet be hope for the giants after all. The diminutive larvae of the great red are all mouths. Like all babies, they only want to eat. Their universe is 3 millimeters wide, but their contribution to the future of the species could be decisive. For those that were left at sea, tomorrow will not be blue, but black. It is not easy being plankton. An army of gelatinous invertebrates rises from the depths each night to devour the tuna's eggs and larvae. Like a kind of macabre video game, they consume them by the millions. At this point in their life, the red titans are so vulnerable that anything can gobble them up. Evolution has chosen these places for spawning because, theoretically, they harbor few predators. Many others leave their eggs here at the mercy of the currents, but the Mediterranean is slowly heating up, which makes it a paradise for tentacled beings. Even species that were once rarely seen now swim towards here. Today, there is a very bizarre jellyfish in the Balearic Sea. It filters the water in search of bluefin tuna larvae, and it's controlled by scientists from the same boat that just finished off its fishing season and which is now collaborating with Dr. Francisco Alemany.
We detect the cages in which spawning has taken place daily. There you have a cage with almost 1,000 tuna that are reproducing, at least part of them are, every day. I mean, every time a female lays eggs in that spot, she lays hundreds of thousands of eggs, millions of eggs. Of those million, in order to repopulate the species, a mere 1, 2, or 3 will reach adulthood.
The team determines the threat posed by the jellyfish, which constantly clog up the filters.
And what we try to do, not only capture larvae and analyze them, but to sort of completely recreate the environment. We study all of the environmental, physical, chemical, biological parameters. I think that science should take advantage of the experience they've amassed. And I think fishermen, also very interesting, when you really interact and communicate, I think they also perfectly understand our point of view. They know the goal of science is to help to preserve the resources of the species, and I think that they are the ones who are the most interested in what we do.
In the meantime, in the Atlantic Ocean, José Luis Cort is tending to the young tuna that have not yet entered the Mediterranean and that come here to feed.
The Bay of Biscay is an area where young red tuna gather during the summer months. In this season, boats that fish with rods and live bait catch their fish, and we scientists take advantage of these boats in order to conduct our experiments.
Once again, biologists and fishermen together.
These boats are equipped with fishing rods and live bait. That is, they catch small fish that they throw back in the water alive in order to attract the schools of tuna near the boat and thus fish them with their fishing rods.
It's not only bluefin tuna, orcas, and dolphins that understand the sea. Fishermen do too. Neptune's chosen people, those among whom God himself chose his apostles.
We scientists take advantage of the fishing season in the Bay of Biscay in order to conduct our research tasks. One of these is installing electronic markers inside their abdomen after they've been captured. This procedure can be done in under a minute and a half. During the whole time, the fish is taken from the water, gets the electronic marker inserted, and is thrown back in. We scientists are optimistic about the future because we've noticed that our work, in some way, benefits the future of the red tuna.
They have always called us giants. Our life is a journey. Our way, the surf on the water.
The solutions to ensure the safety of wild populations of bluefin tuna include a fierce control of illegal fishing practices and the development of fish farming to complete the reproductive cycle of the species in captivity. The circle has to be closed, but we must be willing to pay a price for the sacrifice.
I wasn't able to say goodbye. This has been my path, my story. Whatever takes place from now on depends on the others. It was always thus, ever since we were gods.
In 2007, it became forbidden to fish tuna that are under 4 years old in the Western Mediterranean. Since then, almost 1 million tuna per year have ceased to be caught and kept. That new million a year that have remained in the sea have already become part of the reproductive population, and they've been detected by aerial scientific surveyors as well as by sea level researchers. Tuna fishing fleets from France, Italy, and Spain seem to be rigorously abiding by the established quotas. The fight must now be focused on controlling all fishing techniques in every country. As long as the wind keeps blowing, the Great Red must continue crossing the seas.